So, how many of you guys have drop shotted for bass before? Anybody? Okay, so you kind of understand the principle, how it works. Okay. It is basically the same, but I'll go through kind of the basics of drop shotting, and then go through some of the bait options. With drop shotting, so a couple things you need to know. It was really designed for deep water, clear water fishing. It was developed in Japan to target largemouth that they've stocked out there in their reservoirs. And those lakes, the clarity is like it is out here right now. You can see down 20 feet and see what you're fishing for. But there's a lot of boat traffic too on those lakes, so the fish stay down deep. They had to find a way to get to them. And this is one way they came up with it. Guys in California picked up on it and started fishing it in their reservoirs, and it just spread into the bass world. And the panfishermen have done some form of it down south for crappie for years, but usually just live bait and spider rigging. But lately, with pan fishing kind of getting a little more popular as a more than just going out and chasing for food, more of like actually going after trophy fish, companies have started to cater to that and create equipment that is better quality. And one thing that has really improved in the last 5 years is the plastics. A lot of times, like if you guys were at the last seminar, Joe was talking about the Panfish plastics were just copies of the bass stuff. It was fairly stiff and didn't have a ton of action to it. Now we have guys like Candy Plastics, Bob Garland, you know, these guys that took hand-poured panfish plastics to like a level that the bass guys do their plastics at, and the softness and the suppleness to it have a lot of subtle action to happen on the plastics, and it's let techniques like this become more and more effective. So for me, drop shotting started 5 years ago for panfish. I always like to try to take bass tactics and turn it into something else in a different form of fishing. And I have a few lakes out in the Pinckney Rack area that I thought would be perfect for it. Went out there every summer, middle of July, a lot of boat traffic, go out there at night, and I was drop shotting, and I was catching perch, and I was catching bluegill. I started doing it with live bait first, just to see if I can catch them doing it. Live bait gives me more confidence for something I'm doing new. Which is a good tip for everybody that's getting into doing this type of fishing. If you're trying it, you're not having any luck, put some live bait on, see if there's fish there. Because you'll at least catch a small fish. And then switch back to plastics and fish it a little harder, or try to change it up a little bit. But how you fish this rig is you basically have a hook rigidly attached in the line. The hook that's on here is actually the VMC spin shot. You can use an Aberdeen hook for panfish purposes pretty easily, octopus hook, or an actual drop shot hook. And then below that, you're going to have a section of mono or fluorocarbon that you're going to suspend the weight to. The weight comes in two forms. You'll have a ball style, which is what this one has, and then you also have a pencil style. The pencil style is really good for when you're dragging over top of weeds. It doesn't get hung up as much. The round ball style tends to stay better connected in rougher conditions for some guys. And you don't have it lifting off as much because you're not having that length. When you're fishing this rig, you want to keep that weight constantly attached to the bottom. Okay? If you're fishing it vertically or you're casting it and dragging it back to the boat, that weight is to stay attached to the bottom at all times. And you're basically going to impart the action by shaking the rod tip really aggressively. And what that's going to do is make that tail just kind of dance around. Okay? That's where all the action comes from. It's a very subtle action. It works extremely well on neutral and negative fish at certain times of year as well, especially like on this lake in the summertime. There's a lot of boat traffic. They don't want something big and flashy and aggressive coming at them. You can fish something subtle like this and catch a lot of fish. Doesn't matter if it's bass, walleye, perch, bluegill, they all like it. One thing that will help you keep connected to the bottom is getting the right rod for it. This particular rod is a St. Croix Panfish series. It's a 7 foot. Yeah, 7 foot extra fast. The reason you want an extra fast action rod is because all the flexibility in the rod is right in the tip section. Okay? So when you're shaking this, the weight that's on the bottom is going to let that tip load. And it will keep that weight attached to the bottom. If you use a fast or some of our standard panfish rods guys used to using, you'll actually keep lifting that up off the bottom. You won't think you're doing it, but you're basically hopping it along. And it doesn't get you that shaking, that shimmy action that you want out of the bait. Can you catch fish doing that sometimes? Yeah, you can catch them on a bare hook sometimes. So the important thing is keep that weight attached to the bottom. You want a rod that has a nice, soft, subtle tip to it. This particular one is a fairly new rod to the market. Another one that came out last year, it's a little bit more in everybody's price range, is the K&E Whip R. This rod is actually graphite and fiberglass. The tip section, it has a fiberglass insert, and that's where all the flexibility happens here. When you do this, you do lose some sensitivity in the rod and feel, but it has a nice soft tip to it, so you can use it. And it's got a ton of backbone, so if you're looking to a smaller, you're okay. So this is also the rod I like to use for fishing weightless plastics. This particular rod is what I like to fish with. I'll get into that a little later, why I do that.
What pound test line?
This is actually 6-pound nanofill main line and 4-pound leader on this one. The line that I use when I'm drop shotting really depends on the scenario. If I'm in 15 feet or deeper, I'm gonna run a braid or a line like nanofill. It's a no stretch line. If I get a little bit shallower, I'm gonna run fluorocarbon or a monofilament. Problem with most fluorocarbons for most guys is they're too stiff for your standard ultralight reel. So if you notice on both of my rods, I don't run your small ultralight reel. I run a 1000 series Shimano, which is got some pretty good line capacity, but what I found is that it allows you to manage your line better and improves casting distance, but also lets you use heavier lines or lines that are a little stiffer, like in the case of fluorocarbon, which is actually basically invisible in the water. So in clear conditions, it'll help you catch a few more fish. But this just manages the line a little bit better. If you do hook into a large fish on light tackle, you have a much larger drag surface, your reel will hold up a little better over time. You don't need to spend a ton of money. This is a $20 reel, and it's been used by me for 10 years. And it looks fairly new except for the scales. So that's the nice thing about Panfish. You don't have to spend a ton of money to have a reel that's gonna work for you. This particular rod here, the St. Croix, it's a $120 rod. It's really good toy. I like it. It's not a requirement, but when I've drop shotted this rod versus that rod, in rougher conditions, this rod, I can feel better what's going on. When it's calmer, that K&E is just fine. This works really well on rock bass too, if you want to take some kids out and have fun. In the springtime when they're in spawning, or they get off the break walls, cast it out towards the break wall, and just have them drag it and bounce the rod tip. So
You cast or do you drift? Or both?
you can do both. If you have, for like perch, if you got perch that are kind of scared to cross a weed flat, and those weeds that are really short and close to the bottom that are kind of rough feeling, it works really good to drift a drop shot. You can drift through there and it's just like dragging tubes. You're going to impart a little bit of action to it. Just keep it bouncing. And all of a sudden, you're just going to feel either a tap that's different than what you're feeling from the weight, or you'll feel just all of a sudden nothing's there. Like you just lost contact with everything. Whatever changes, set the hook. Plastics wise on it, there's a ton of options. Some of my favorites to fish, you all know I like candy plastics. I fell in love with these things last winter when I finally got to use them. STV 175s, 2.5s, fathead fries, munchies, ice picks, they all drop shot fairly well. As it gets colder, I like to downsize to a smaller bait. These are the 175s. This time of the year, it's a perfect size, I think. Even on a jig head, it's a perfect size to fish. In the springtime, I was using the fathead fry for bluegill, but I was also running these guys from X-Zone. These actually have a floating tail to them. And it's basically a little 2-inch piece of plastic. And it doesn't seem like it'd have a ton of action to it, and it has a really subtle movement to it. It just kind of waves a little bit. And it seems like a big bait for bluegill, but when all you want to catch is 10-inch bluegill, why fish with a little tiny piece of plastic? You know, you want big fish, fish with big baits.
Other purposes.
Well, Perch, generally, when we're looking at bigger perch, they're gonna feed on gobies, shiners, crawfish, larger mentos, mayfly larvae, stuff like that. Or baby bluegill, baby rock bass, baby sunfish, especially in the fall time when there's a lot of fingerlings. The weeds are dying back. They don't have anywhere else to hide. They start grouping up in little schools just like minnows do, and they start getting preyed upon by the big bluegill. So color-wise, beautiful thing about panfish is they can hit bubble gum. The guy next to you could be hitting them on motor oil. I prefer to stick with more natural colors. The reason I stick with more natural colors, when I was doing the ice fishing tournaments and we did a lot of sight fishing on Wampler's Lake, we started to notice something. The bright colors drew them in, but your blues and your blacks always got you your biggest fish. You didn't catch as many on it, but those are always your biggest fish. Same with largemouth and smallmouth fishing. Your more natural colors are gonna get you your larger fish, especially on the tough days. Shape-wise, I like things that are long and narrow. If you look at a lot of the bass dropshot baits, they're worm style baits, or they're really slender. I try to mimic that in this. The only one that's not is the fathead fry. That kind of throws out the window. The fathead fry, I think, looks like a baby goby, and everything on this lake eats gobies. Another one that's kind of fun, especially in the fall, to fish, is crayfish imitations. This one's from Southern Pro. It does have a lot of movement to it in the claws and that. What a lot of people don't realize, big panfish prey on crayfish a ton. There's been cases where I've actually fished spawning bluegill with live crayfish or with soft plastic crayfish and outfished everybody around me. So don't overlook imitations like this for panfish. I had a customer in here the other day, half his fish had gobies, half his fish had crayfish in it, off the same weed bed. So they're just like the bigger fish are. They'll feed on a lot of different shapes, a lot of different things.
Talking about perch, right? Perch
Yep.
eat gobies.
Perch eat gobies all the ton, especially here in the fall. What happens in the fall with the goby population and a lot of the Great Lakes, the young of the year up shallow, they start losing the weed beds, and the basic bottom level of life starts just getting less and less active, and there's less of it around. So they have to start migrating to some of the deeper water where some of it still is at. And what happens is you get predators know that's coming, and they'll meet them. And there's a video I saw, one of the in-fisherman cameramen was up on Wisconsin, in Green Bay, and they were filming these gobies just running across this flat, a whole herd of them, like there's 100 of them. And they came to this ledge, and one jumped off. If you ever seen a goby swim, they do kind of like jump and skip across the bottom. One jumps off, and a smallie came right up the ledge and smoked it. They didn't know those fish were there. He rolls off the side of there's 100 smallies just angled up, waiting for gobies to come dropping off the ledge. They sat there for like 2 or 3 hours, I guess, watching this happen. And since then, they've seen it happen in other places. And if you watch how things happen, they just kind of converge at a certain depth. Even on this lake, you'll have those deeper fish will come in, and you see the shallow fish as the weeds die off. They just kind of meet in that line. And for a few weeks there, that's where everything happens. Like right now, 8 to 12 feet of water, there's a lot of activity right now along that line. That's because you have the shallow water fish coming out, and the deep water fish coming in and meet and feed on everything. So, is there any other questions on plastics and hooks?
Yeah, what size hook?
The hooks that I use, I tend to match it up to the plastics I'm using.
Okay.
If I'm using a really narrow, slender plastic, I'll go with a little smaller one. I'll get a little better hookup percentage on those. I run a number 6 most of the time. An 8 will work. The spin shot works good with your shorter plastics. If you get into the longer ones, go pick up some Aberdeens. Now for perch, you don't have to go so small on hooks. Bluegill, pump seeds, you do because their mouths are a lot smaller. An Aberdeen hook just gives you a lot of space. Puts that hook gap further into the bait. It helps you out a little bit. Yeah. Now for the weights, forgot to touch on this. You don't need to use drop shot weights. Pan fishermen inherently don't want to spend a ton of money, which is okay. I'm the exception. I like to spend a lot of money on panfish. You can use round split shots. Don't use the removable split shots though. The reason I say that is that little extra wings that are on there get hung up on the weeds nonstop. So if you get any type of weed cover, they do not pull through nicely. And you actually, if these weights ever get hung up, you want them to slide off or break off the line. You want to get your hook in your plastic bag because that's the most expensive part of everything. Lead's cheap, so let the lead stay there. These have a special clip that clips onto it with a split shot. Just clip it onto the line. If it falls off, just put another one on. Okay? Any other questions? Wow, I covered it all. Sweet. So
you use a single hook or a double or triple hook for drop shotting for perch?
well, if we're talking perch, it's not a bad idea to put multiple hooks on there. Good thing you brought that up. You reminded me to talk about this.
Thank you.
Those things are, yeah.
Last year, I was working down the shop on Erie, and all through the summer, me and a couple other guys started working on a new perch rig. It all started from a conversation of, wouldn't it be nice to have a pre-made drop shot rig we can use for perch? And through a couple trial and errors, we had beads and other crimps over top so the hook stayed perfectly outright like this. And it worked, but it took too long to make. So I got thinking, I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, when I ice fish, my jig, like the Fiska style jig, my tungsten jigs, sit at almost a 30 or 45 degree angle and my hookup percentage is awesome. So is there a way we can make that happen with this? And we played with a couple different bead sizes underneath the hook, and the 6 mil gave us the best hook angle. And that's what we ended up with. This is basically a pre-made drop shot rig. It's idiot proof. You don't have to tie any knots. They're already tied for you. Clip it on and go. You can also fish this with plastics and live bait. When I fish plastics, I prefer to have a tied-in hook though. With this one, you do lose a little bit of the ability to make the hook move, just because of how it's set up on the line. But it's still a very, very effective way of doing it. A lot of times when I'm fishing Erie or out here in some deeper water, I'll take one of these rigs, set it on a rod, put nothing but plastics on it, put a fairly heavy weight onto it, like a triangle weight or a pyramid weight, and just basically lock it right into the bottom. And I want a rod kind of like this one's got really, really soft tip, and let the tip of the rod take up all the waves and just let this sit there. That little subtle pop it gets is enough to impart action on the plastics. And I'll set that.
The still fishing you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll set one fully rigged with plastics in the rod holder. The other one, I'll fish live bait or a combination of the both. And this basically just acts as an attractant. So when you're taking off another fish and another rod, they're still staring at something. Perch are very, very curious fish. You get a puff of dust down there, something for them to stare at, they'll stay there and look at it. It's like light and moths. It'll hang out. So if you can keep those fish underneath you can catch more fish. But I do a 2-rod system sometimes, and when I start fishing the bigger water perch. And it's basically a drop shot rig. Every perch rig we've ever used has basically been a drop shot rig, but with tag-ins because of our laws that we've had here in the past. So you can fish it live bait. You can use these. You can tie them up. If you're gonna tie up your own using a non-spin shot hook, you're gonna want to use a polymer knot. How many of you guys use a polymer knot? Okay. When you use the polymer knot, a lot of times you'll get it and the hook will be off angled or be going the other direction on you. If you take your tag in and put it up through the eye, it'll keep it upright and straight for you, and then you just attach your weight to the bottom of it. If you guys don't know what it is, I'll show you each how to do it. It's probably the best knot you're going to learn for any type of lure attachment out there. It's the easiest. You can tie it in the dark with your hands totally numb. So
Make sure you wet your line so it doesn't burn it up.
yeah. Especially on heavier line.
Yeah.
So, did I answer it? Good. Okay. So plastic wise, kind of go recap on it. This is the ice pick. A lot of guys don't look at this series from Candy Plastics. It's a really good drop shot bait. It's a lot like the classic drop shot worm for bass, but in panfish form. It's really small. It's got nice subtle action to it. The wedgie from Little Adam's a good one. The Ice Mite Magnum from J&S, which is this white one here. If you read my blog, you know I absolutely love the ice mites for ice fishing too. The ball that's on here basically makes that tail super unstable in the water, so it's always moving, even with the subtlest movement. So when I'm fishing those perch rigs, I'll run these most of the time on it because that little extra slack that's in there with the hook, you don't notice it with this type of plastic. The Gojo Magnum is another good option. The Gojo Magnum's kind of like a crawfish imitation in a way. It's just got two huge arms. I'll pass this one around for you guys to look at. This came out last year. A lot of guys haven't got a chance to experience it yet. You can fish it on a jig head, fish it on a drop shot. It's a big old bait. It's got the two legs on it, just like the ice mite, but two of them off to the side. It's got a big body on it that's really durable. Crawfish got slammers. Another one that you guys can use, probably half this room probably has these if you do any dock fishing around here, is Panfish Assassins. The same reason why they're deadly underneath the dock on a jig head is because that tail action, just nice subtle tail action. These work really well too, drop shot. I'm trying to think, is there any other baits that are really good drop shot that we sell in the store? Noogies are good. I know a few guys have tried the Domination fries in here and doing well with them. If you got extreme cold front condition, you're fishing around docks or you're fishing from a dock, you can actually take a drop shot rig, back off from that pole, put it right down by the pole and just shake it. And just keep it right there. And eventually that fish is just gonna stare at it and go, all right, you're irritating, I need to eat you. So that works really well around docks. If you're fishing docks and you can't get really close to them, you can actually throw a drop shot rig up along the side of it and shake it. It's gonna keep that bait at the same level and coming right across it. Something else that I'm a big fan of, especially in cold weather, is scenting my plastics. I'll give you a case in point where scent absolutely destroyed everybody around me. They could not keep up with me. I was up on the Detroit River out by Grow Seal. We're fishing perch in March. I was running hair jigs and basically a drop shot rig, a perch rig. And no matter what I did, as long as I put scent on it, I doubled up every time. What happens with scent and fish is, think of water as air, okay? In the springtime, in a cool morning, you can smell better. You can smell all the little scents come off the flowers and that because it just lingers in the air better. When water cools down, it holds that scent better. It doesn't disperse as fast. So those fish tend to rely I think they rely a little more on taste and scent in the cooler weather times to choose if they're gonna bite something or not. So a lot of times you have those big perch come in, just stare at it. They like the action. They didn't like what they smelled as they came up to it. That's my thought on it. So scenting stuff will work really good. Crawfish scents work really well. Crawfish scents mimic a lot of like scuds, freshwater shrimps. Mayflies kind of have a crawfish smell to them a little bit. Gobies are really popular on this lake as a food source, so a goby scent would be good. Just a basic panfish scent, which has a little bit of everything on it. Shad, minnows in it would be a good choice too. Don't need a lot of it, just a little bit on there will go a long ways. So that's drop shotting. It's really not a super complicated technique. It's just getting the right equipment and presenting the bait to them the right way. And just the number one thing to remember is keep that plastic moving. 99% of the time, they're not going to hit plastic sitting still. Especially the big fish, they want it moving. My other favorite thing to do this time of the year, I use this more in the fall than I do in the springtime. I don't have as good of success in the springtime as I do in the fall time, and it usually starts right about now through about the end of November. This works really well. Fishing docks, blowdowns, fallen trees, big old brush piles. I like to fish weightless plastics for crappie. I'll catch a lot of bluegill doing that as well. What I use for this, what really improved it for me last year was getting a hold of nanofill. I don't like pumping just one type of line for a technique because there's a lot of good options out there, but the nice thing about nanofill is how slick it is. There is similar lines out there. There's Slick 8, there's 832, but when I got a hold of this and did a product comparison across all the lines, this outcasted every single one of them. And this made this type of presentation possible in my mind for me, because the biggest problem with fishing weightless soft plastic for panfish is it's small. There's not a lot of weight there. It's not like a bass plastic where you got 5 inches of plastic that weighs about a half ounce. you can still throw it quite a long ways. But what I do with this is, if I'm fishing around docks or fairly sparse cover, I'll run a 2-hook rig. Similar to what Joe was talking about a few weeks back about running 2 jig heads, okay? Use a surgeon's loop, you can trim it long on one side, tie in 2 Aberdeen hooks, and then you just thread the worm on there. This is a Charlie Brewer grub. Other ones that work, Panfish Assassins work well, the STBs work well on it. Northland came out with a new bait this year. It's called a paddle bug. It's basically the same thing as the Charlie Brewer grub. But what I've noticed is that this weighs a little more in the water and it has a different sink rate than these. Which, if you ever fish crappie long enough, you'll notice they always want to feed up. And you'll see that bobber actually tip up and never go down sometimes. So they're always pushing the bait up. So you want, those fish are always looking up, so you want to put the bait with the direction they're looking. Crappie rarely will go down for a bait, but they'll always come up for a bait. So what this lets you do is keep it high and in front of their face longer. And just like working a Rapala or a Rogue or a soft plastic jerkbait, you're just going to cast it out and you're going to twitch it. Just get a cadence to it. You can pause it, let it sink, and then kick it up again. And a lot of times, these will stay in line, but if you pop it, every once in a while, that one will dar off to the side. It'll look like just basically 2 minnows hanging out together. They're all beat up and dying, and everything wants to eat them that way. So, but the only time I don't fish 2 hooks is when I'm fishing heavy cover for them, because always one of these will go up in the tree and one will go in the water. Always, without fail. So you want to make sure when you're heavy cover, just go down to 1. I don't hide the hook at all on this. Crappie have a very soft mouth. There's not a lot to hook into. So I want to get really good positive hookup percentage on it. So I'll run it exposed. Another nice thing about lines like Nanofill and Slick 8 and all that, they're really tough. So if you do get hung up, you can actually straighten that hook and pull it all back. You don't want to pull the cover back to you, but you want to at least get that hook to come out. And then you can rebend the hook and throw it right back in there. Aberdeen hooks are great for that because they're a very light wire hook. This is a VMC Aberdeen. Eagle Claw makes a couple good ones. Gamakatsu makes a good one. Hook color, if you like red, fish it. They usually turn gold anyways after a bunch of fish. And they still keep on catching fish. So this is a technique that a lot of guys haven't thought about trying, in my opinion, just because it's kind of difficult to put their head around fishing something like this for panfish, especially because it's so long. The other thing is too, with the different plastics you get, you'll have brands that will have a lot of salt in them, some will have no salt in them. That will actually affect the sink rate of that plastic. The Charlie Brewer ones have 0 salt in it, so it wants to float. So a lot of times what I'll have to do is just take a small little BB or B split shot and just put it right ahead of that knot where you attach it, you know, right up where you join the two, the leader and the main line together, and that's just going to let those baits sink a little bit. You don't want to use too heavy one because the idea is to keep that bait high, and if it does sink really slowly and look like an injured or dying minnow. So that's really weightless plastics. Anybody got any questions on that? Anybody willing to go try that over at Metro right now? Because I know there's some crappie in there. They're dying to get caught with that.
Do you ever fish that with a slip bobber?
No.
No?
It kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Okay.
A lot of times when I'm fishing blowdowns, those fish are really spooky anyways, and they're really high up in the blowdown and in the thicker stuff at the surface. So you don't want a lot of noise hitting them on top because they'll just drop down and wait for you to leave, and they'll come right back up. The other thing is too is when you're fishing this, don't get out too early. Don't go out when it's dark, and don't fish after like 6, 7 o'clock at night. What I found out is those crappie, as that surface temp warms up, they'll start creeping up towards it, and they get more and more susceptible to being caught. Last fall, me and the guy were down in Erie doing this, in a little backwater on Erie, and we had it dialed into a 3-hour window. That's the only time we give them the bite. We tried it with minnows, couldn't give them the bite before or after that. We literally had to sit there in the boat and go, wait for the surface temp to hit a certain degree. And we went and looked for it. Once we found that water at a certain temperature, it was like if it was a degree under it, they wouldn't touch a thing. So when we hit that magic number, everything started feeding. So as we get later in the fall, that will come key where you want a bright sunny day, something that will warm that surface temp and let them get up there and feed. Plastics for that, I mean, Ice White Magnum, the Paddle Bug, Charlie Brewer Grub, Panfish Assassins all work really well with that. I want more of a minnow shaped bait for that. Again, it's a really simple presentation. You don't have to make it too complicated. The rod that I like to use, that K&E rod, partly because I have no weight on this, really. That soft tip will let what little weight I have on it and generate a lot of speed really quick and gets it out a little bit further. This nano fill lets me actually be a little more accurate. One thing you'll notice if you try it with mono, your accuracy is crap, especially in wind. And if you're throwing into blowdowns, if it drifts off 2 inches, you're losing your bait. So I got to the point where I'm hitting the spot inside that blowdown this big repeatedly once I got used to it. So both of these techniques, equipment's really important, but you don't have to spend a fortune to get it, which is rare when you hear someone say equipment's important.
Yeah.
Usually there's a $100 or $500 price tag onto it. So is there any other panfish topic you guys want me to touch on really quick? I know a couple of people had some questions earlier.
How important do you feel the fluorocarbon leader is?
Fluorocarbon is an interesting little devil. I think it does make a difference at times, particularly when you get really pressured fish or really clear water. I think it does nothing but help your confidence because you know that's invisible. And the number one thing in fishing is confidence. Rick Clunn has a thing where if he's not feeling too good about himself that day, he's not going to fish, I heard, because his confidence is crap. Because he thinks if you're sending bad wavelengths down the rod, nothing wants to eat it. or like Caesar, if you're tense, you send it through the leash and the dog goes nuts. So confidence plays a huge factor in fishing, I think, because when you got a lot of confidence in something, you're going to fish a little bit better, you're going to pay attention a little bit better to everything that's going on. Anything in life that you got a lot of confidence in, it's like second nature, it just happens. But if it's something you've done for the first time, you're going to stumble, you're going to screw up, and you're not going to, you think you're doing it wrong at all times.
Try not to fluorocarbon without your fingers, but do anything for your confidence.
Well, fluorocarbons come a long ways. The knots are not that big of an issue anymore. At least for me. Polymer knot works on every type of line out there. Doesn't matter what it is, it works. Fluoro, mono, copolymer, braid, nano, it all works on it. When you're attaching two lines together, back-to-back uni will work 99.99% of the time with any of the lines out there. So fluorocarbon, good thing, necessary, not always. It's my honest opinion on it. Do I fish it a lot? Yeah, I do. Fluorocarbon has a couple benefits because it's so hard. It doesn't take abrasion really good. I mean, it takes abrasion really well. It doesn't get beat up because it's so stiff and hard. So, like for ice fishing, I'll actually use fluorocarbon with my tungsten because it sinks. So I can actually increase my fall rate, but still keep a really tiny presentation to it. But I haven't totally formulated that concept in my head totally yet, so I don't talk about it much. I'm still working on it. But I do fish fluorocarbon on tungsten a lot in the wintertime. And for drop shotting, it's nice, especially in deeper water because it doesn't have a lot of stretch. It does get down a little quicker for you too. This type of presentation, if you have a fluorocarbon, like for the weightless plastics, if you have a fluorocarbon you have confidence in, it's going to perform well. It's not going to jump off the spool on you a lot in windy conditions. It would be something to look at because it does want to sink. It will help pull down those plastics a little bit, especially like the Charlie Brewer ones that don't have a lot of salt in them. So.
With the weightless plastics with the tool, how long is that tag end of it?
I run them. You're talking from the leader to the main line?
Right.
I usually start with about a 3-foot piece and just kind of eyeball the loop when I tie it. It's a surgeon's loop. And I usually tie the loop about that big and I'll just cut it. That usually gets the baits about 5-6 inches apart.
Okay.
There's been times where I'm fishing some really large dock complexes. I'll stretch it out so it's like that far. apart between the two baits, but this top line would be so close to the main line knot, you could almost use a tag in off of that to do it. Only reason I do that on those bigger dock pilings, sometimes those fish are a little further apart. So I could, in theory, catch one off of this pole and that pole at the same time. It's yet to happen, but in theory, I hope it does. But one day I'll get it to work. I have had doubles on that, and that's really entertaining in brush. You have one crappie go around it, one crappie go around this way, and get wrecked. And you're like, do I try to get them undone, or do I take the boat in there? So, usually when you take the boat into a blowdown, it's toast for at least an hour. There was only one time it didn't matter. We stayed inside the blowdown with the fish and started catching them. We just dropped it right off the side of the boat and just jigged it. But that was an exceptional day. They were all 12-inch cookie cutter crappie. I think we caught 50 in like an hour. So that was awesome. So again, this too though, if it's like late November and you're having a hard time getting them, put lip hook a minnow and do the same thing. No weight on it, just lip hook a minnow. That's all. That's what you're trying to imitate. So there's been one case where minnows outfished plastics for me in the last 5 years. In this situation, happened one day, and we had a cold front that we couldn't get that water temp to that magic degree. It kept sitting right in that middle zone. We put live minnows on, and we caught them that day on it, but not really good. So I don't think they really wanted to bite anything that day. We kind of force fed them a little bit that day. So, any other questions? Anything panfish related, I'll take it. Bobber fishing?
Any particular brand of scent better than other?
Scents, there's a lot of good scents on the market. I have two favorites, Smelly Jelly and Juiced Up. The thing that I've noticed with a lot of scent companies is they'll make a big run and it sits in a warehouse. And a lot of times the warehouses are not temperature controlled, or they'll be in the back of a semi truck going across one side of the country, and then someone will ship it to you that same side of the country it came from. Most scents, if they're made from natural products, will turn or get sour or skunky in the sense of a beer. If it gets too warm, it gets kind of skunky tasting. I think that happens with scents. Juiced Up and Smelly Jelly are two of the companies that I know of that make it pretty much fresh and to order. So if you're buying direct from them or from us, where we get it on a regular basis in here, it's in really good shape. And those two scents too stay good in your bag a lot longer. I have a jar of Smelly Jelly. It's 5 years old, and I still catch fish with it. It doesn't look that good anymore though, because the heat's got to it, but it still works good.
Would you use it through the ice too?
Yes. There's been a few occasions where I've gotten really desperate to try to get the big ones to bite, and even spikes wouldn't work, so I coated the jig and the spike with scent, and I get half of them to bite. I just kind of smothered it with as much smell as I could. Now you could put the wrong scent on and totally turn them off though too. I don't recommend WD-40 for a scent, even though I know they used to say that on their bottle. I don't recommend it.
That was 30 years ago.
Because that just like washes right off as soon as it hits the water, I think.
Use an
So
oil slick.
exactly. But all these scents will leave an oil slick anyway. So, but I also want a gel, not an oil, not a liquid. I want a gel scent. A gel scent will actually coat the product, coat your line, coat the jig, and it stays on there. What a lot of guys have said about the Juiced Up is they'll put it inside of a tube. The bass guys, they'll throw it in their boat for weeks. It'll just sit there. They pull that lead head out and they can smell the scent still on the lead head. Weeks after, and they fished it all day. So Juiced Up is probably one of the longest lasting scents that I've used. Smelly Jelly would be second. So.
I bumped into an old timer 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that was before scents even got popular. And he was using scents on his fishing bucket, ice fishing,
Was he using anise oil?
Preparation H.
There's a
Preparation H.
there's
He
a
had glob on his
catfish.
bucket,
Yep.
Fish
You
oil.
just dip that bait in there. and-
There's a lot of catfishermen that will actually use Preparation H and gummy bears together. I don't know why that works, but there's some guys from Monroe that swear by it, and they catch fish with it. They'll put gummy bears on their hook, and then put Preparation H all over it. I don't know where that one came up and how they figured out that worked. That is just weird.
I'm in there.
So
Don't want to go there.
I don't even want to think about it. So the other funny one is there's a guy up in Saginaw Bay that will actually run gummy worms on his crawler harnesses. And he swears he catches nothing but walleye, never catches a sheephead, never catches a catfish. I don't know. But I don't know if that works or not, but hey, if it works for him. That may very well go to that whole confidence thing. It worked one day for him, and now it's the only thing he needs to do. Us fishermen are very superstitious.
Yeah.
Some of us don't like to change. We find that one thing that works, and it's if that didn't work, something else caused the problem. Like when you buy minnows, there's a fathead in there. That one fathead ruined the whole bucket. I hear that all the time for some really old timers. They all live in the same water. That one fathead didn't contaminate all the minnows. You just weren't on the fish. So, any other questions? As soon as that camera goes off, you guys are gonna ask me a bunch of questions, aren't you? So, that's basically it. It's pretty simple stuff. I know it looks complicated or sounds complicated sometimes, but these are two very, very simple techniques that just take a little bit of specialized equipment to do. You don't need to spend a fortune on it. That K&E rod and the 1000 Shimano is it's under $100. You can get it. You can make the reel as cheap as you want, but just make sure you have something that's fairly large. The spool's fairly wide for any panfish, and that's my personal belief. If you notice, I also run a lot of long rods. Long rods give you a little more casting distance, I think, and also a little more accuracy. And when you start casting into heavy cover, the accuracy can get really, really important. So, you guys want me to demonstrate that surgeon loop for you guys? A lot of you guys don't know what it looks like. I know last year I was at Bass Pro Shop, and Brian Brosdale was talking about some rig that he does through the ice, and he ties a really complicated loop knot. And I was asking a question because sometimes these guys have weird reasons why they don't use a knot or another knot. And I asked him, is there any other reason why you don't use like a surgeon's loop or some other loop knot for that? He goes, you want to demonstrate it? I'm like, sure. I've known Bro for a while from Trap Attack days on fishing tournaments and that, so I was there to say hi and chat with him, and somehow I got pulled into a seminar to show how to do a knot. So basically, you get your line. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's on a white surface. Does that work?
Close
All right.
line.
You're gonna double it up, make a big old loop, okay? Pull it, and you got one line now, even though it's doubled up. You're gonna you make a loop here, and you have your loop up here, okay? If you tie a polymer knot, this looks very familiar right now, except your bait is inside this loop right here right now. You're gonna take this loop, you're gonna pass it through there once, again, still like a polymer knot, but you're gonna go around again. You're just gonna pull that small loop tight, and that makes your loop, okay? When you're using this, do not tie your hook to that tag end. You will lose the first fish you hook up onto on that. It will go away. So, and then to make the two tag ends, don't let your gunner see that, but then you have your two tag ends there. You tie one of your hooks onto that one onto that one. That double jig rig that Baylog was talking about. I use this for a ton of different things. This is how I tie my Michigan rig for ice fishing, where I run a fly off of here and a small jig on here. There's 4 knots that if you're a fisherman, if you learn polymer, surgeon's loop, back-to-back uni, and I can't remember what the 4th one was. Oh, snell knot. You learn those 4 knots, you can make every rig in freshwater fishing need to do. That includes tying on skein. The snell knot, it's just not as good as the actual knot that they designed for it, but it does work. I use it for chicken liver, for catfishing. So.
Tie an egg loop knot.
Yep, egg loop knot. Yeah, that does a better job, but you can get away with it if you don't know how to do that one. That one's I pain a lot on that one. I can never get that one to work for me.
Tie him first, bring him with you.
So, Surgeon loop, polymer knot. Those are the only 2 knots, unless you're going to run a leader off of some braid that you need to know. I know somebody was asking me about bobber fishing earlier. Bobbers are an interesting thing with me. I make it really complicated. Every bobber is designed for a certain purpose. There's general purpose bobbers, there's fixed bobbers, there's slip floats. If you go over to our bobber section, we got a very, very good variety over there. There's the pear-shaped slip floats, which are good general purpose. They cast fairly well. They don't get extra long distance for you in windy conditions. They're not the most quiet bobber when they hit the water, but they're in the middle. They're a decent starter bobber for most guys. Most guys that fish slip floats, that's what they know. Most guys that fish the fixed floats know that shape as well from that. I use a slip float 99% of the time. The only time I don't anymore is when I'm fishing around dock pilings and I'm trying to control that depth to a precise depth every time. I'm actually going to run something called a mini shy bite. It's a little pencil float that I want it to rig up so it lays on a 45. And when that fish takes it, a crappie, bluegill, doesn't matter what it is. If it's crappie, it lays flat. If it's something else, I'll do this. But if it just goes like that, it's probably a bass. It's probably a bass, and you're gonna have some fun on a light tackle.
Yeah.
But those mini shy bites, I don't put any split shot on them. I'll actually just run a tungsten jig on them, and I gotta look back at my notes, but I know what size for which size float I need to use, and I don't need to put anything else on it. I'll fish spikes, I'll fish plastics on it. And the cool thing about those mini shy bites, when you're working on 45, you can drag them really easily in that little tipping action, because when they settle again, they flip, then they come back. You can actually kind of jig that, and that plastic will kind of lift and kind of move, a lot like a scud. If you ever seen scud swim or freshwater shrimp swim in the water, they kind of kick, and it does that same exact motion. The stealth bobbers that are over there, they have a large ball end to them and a small mass basically. Those are absolutely awesome in rougher conditions. The reason is there's the color code on the bar. Where that black line is, that's where your water line's supposed to be. So you actually have over half that bobber underneath the water, which makes it more stable. It doesn't want to tip and rock around on you. It just basically rides the wave up and down like a buoy. That's what you want it to do. So when it gets rough, you can still see those subtle bites, even though that thing could be traveling 3 feet. And there's the TJ Wagglers over there, are a more extreme version of it. Those cast really well. And windy conditions, you can get them out there a long ways. They don't make a big splash when they hit the water because they're a very small profile. Kind of like a diver, you know, you want the smaller entrance at first, and then that doesn't make much noise. Or if you're flipping and pitching for bass, you don't want that big bulky bait just to smack the water. You want to just slide it right into it. So, slip floats are one of my favorite ways to fish too for panfish. I'll use them quite a bit, but I won't just stick to fly bait on. I'll fish a lot of plastics. It's about 3-4 weeks ago, I was out on the Bell Hump, and we were fishing plastics underneath the slip float. We found those fish wanted that bait were this far above the weeds. Anything above this, they wouldn't touch it. But that little zone, they wanted it to be there. So we couldn't keep anything there too well, but a slip float let us do that. We could just basically let it hang there. And all we did is just shake that rod tip and let that bobber kind of bounce and use that as kind of like a rod tip. And we just were able to let that bait sit there and just kind of flop around, and we were just destroying perch on it. That day though too, scent, without scent, we caught fish, but not really great. Put a little scent on it, as soon as it settled, boom, every time. So that's another thing, sometimes scent can trigger bites a little faster for you. Not a necessary thing at some days, but it does help out. So I know someone else has got a question, they're afraid to ask it. Yeah, I know you got one. Everybody turn and look at him now in the classroom. So, anything from Joe's seminar you guys want to get a refresher on if you were here for it, or have any questions on it that I might be able to answer? So I know I had a lot of questions the next 5 days after that about a couple things. So I know we kind of went a little quick, and some guys just didn't want to. There's a lot of people here who didn't want to look stupid or something in front of the class. Not a big deal. So the camera's off. Go ahead and ask. He will not be online. So I think that's about it.
Super.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
We'll keep it
Appreciate
simple
got
for you
drawing.
guys. So
Drawings.